I want to thank everyone for joining us at the DevOps Live meetup. Just want to let everyone know that we're still making plans for the DevOps Days Dallas that's happening in August. But next week we will have, maybe next week or at the beginning of May, we'll probably have a little bit more details as to hold on a second here. Just bear with me a moment. Okay, here we go again. Sorry about that. So yes, we're going to go ahead and bring on now a friend of mine, Angel Rivera, and he is with Circle CI. So let's bring him on the line real quick here. Hey, Angel, how you doing tonight?
Hi, Mike. Hey, I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
Sounds great. Sounds great. Well, everyone, this is Angel Rivera. He's with Circle CI, and today he's going to talk to us about, let's see here, the increased app confidence using CI/CD as infrastructure as code. But since Angel cracked a little joke about me about my freckles on Twitter, I'm just gonna go ahead and take off and let him go ahead and take the show from here. Okay. Thanks, Angel.
Little ribbon, between Boricua,
There you go. Hold on.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Really appreciate you inviting me to come in and give this talk. I know with COVID-19, everybody being kind of locked down, this is a really good experience for me to, get the word out and give my talks. Normally, I'm doing this live and in person at different conferences, but I'm, like everyone else, I'm locked down here in New Jersey. Doing well. So if anyone's curious about that, and I hope everyone else out there is doing well as well. So let's distract ourselves with this talk I put together. And basically what I'm going to talk about is how we can leverage CI/CD infrastructure as code and a little bit of testing to enable our teams and our applications to basically have that little bit of extra oomph as far as testing goes, right? And making sure that the applications that we're writing and releasing are actually, as vetted and tested as possible. So without further ado, let me jump in here. I think, so this is the agenda. And real quick, I'm just going to intro myself in a minute. Then I'm going to speak a little bit about smoke testing. And then I'm going to jump into discussing how you can leverage smoke testing, CI/CD, and infrastructure as code to increase app confidence, right, in your releases. And then I'm going to demonstrate how you can easily, apply some of the stuff I'm talking about into a CI/CD pipeline. And then we're going to deploy some software using that pipeline, that very same pipeline. Then we're going to test that software that we deployed, right? So we'll get into it a little bit later. But right now, let's talk about, I guess, me. So my name is Angel Rivera, and I'm currently a developer advocate for Circle CI. And I spend my days, like I said earlier, going to conferences, tech events, hackathons. That's kind of how I met Mike. And where was it, Mike? In Houston. Yeah, last year, Houston. I gave a talk there. What was it? The CI/CD workshop. Anyway, so I spent a lot of time with developers in the community at a grassroots level, right? So what I'm interested in learning about is how folks are using technology. Any kind of stacks they're using, maybe some business processes that are out there and innovative, basically all kind of perspectives or aspects of technology. And then I bring that back to my teams at Circle CI so that I can kind of inform them of what's going on, the trends in the industry, and some of the features that maybe or some of the features or ways people are doing business with software, and they take that information and then compile it and factor it into their decision-making processes when they're building out new features or innovating in any way for product, right? So that's just like one layer of my job. I do miss it because I got my wings clipped during COVID-19, like pretty much everybody else. But yeah, like I said, this is good that we have these events like this to kind of get out. So with that, I'll go ahead and let's talk about smoke testing. So when I was putting this talk together, for those of you that don't know what smoke testing is, I was putting this talk together and I was trying to look up the origins, because I'm sure, if you're a developer or an operator, at some point you've come across this phrase or this terminology in your work, right? And I was thinking like, well, what's the origins of this term, right? That's constantly used. I kind of already knew what smoke tests were, but I didn't know what the origins of this term was. And then I got to thinking, before I started doing some research on it, I used to work here in New Jersey, in Philly, and in New York in my high school years as a summer kind of intern, I guess, or apprentice, whatever, for contractors. And some of those contractors were plumbers. Now, I distinctly remember, working with these plumbers and, helping them, primarily working with copper, but there's occasional PVC draining systems and stuff. But anyway, we would put these, the plumbing in, and they would go in and solder the plumbing, right, the fittings and the joints. And then when I was a kid, I remember thinking like, all right, they were talking about testing this plumbing that they put in. I'm thinking, wow, okay, we're going to put some water through this, right? But actually, the way they actually did it was they didn't put any water in there. What they did was they got these, inert, non-toxic canisters of I guess, gas or some sort of gas, and they called it smoke. Some of them used dry ice, but at the end of the day, what they were doing was expelling this gas into this newly welded or soldered plumbing. And the reason why they were doing that was they were filling the pipes with smoke, right? So the idea behind that was if you saw any smoke seeping out of any of those joints, then you knew you had a bad weld, or you had a bad, you don't have a seal on that particular joint. So you had to go back and redo all that work that you did, right? Or the plumbers did. So instead of making a mess with water, right, if they had a leak or whatever, then, they could go out and easily, weld the pipes again. Again, if you put water through it as well, you have to dry that out thoroughly before you could even do some more work, right? So there was a lot of reasons for that. And obviously, right, smoke was a very easy way to kind of, flush all that out without having to make a big mess. Now, when I asked the plumbers, like, well, I told them what I thought. I was like, oh, I thought you were going to run water through there. And they're saying, oh, no. We do this as a simple test, right? That it's a controlled, simple test to understand what's happening with the plumbing. Now, once all their plumbing passes smoke tests, then they do another test called pressure testing, right? So that's where they cap off the one end with a gauge. And then they have another end where they just pump air into the pipes. And that's supposed to, they put a certain amount of pressure to test the pipes. And then they leave it for like 24 hours. So the idea there is once they have the air in there, they cap it, it's sealed. And if they go away for 24 hours and come back, when they measure again, that air should be still in the pipe, and that pressure should not change. So if they have any fluctuation, then they know they have a leak somewhere, right? So that's a more stringent, complex test, other outside of the smoke test. So if you think about what I'm going to talk about in moving on in this presentation, think about smoke tests as basically simple, controlled tests that can suss out any kind of simple failures or bugs. So if we're talking, if you translate that over to software, it's the same concept, right? Smoke tests and software are basically very limited controlled tests that are testing simple things, right? So the idea there is you're supposed to get fast feedback on your software. And this is a great way to catch those bugs that are like low-hanging fruit, right? So when we're talking about smoke tests, again, it's a simple controlled test that you can kind of suss out any like common things. Maybe a server is supposed to respond with an OK 200. And if you run a smoke test against a piece of software that you just changed and your server is not responding, then you probably have a real, you can test for that, and you can figure out quickly that this is not a good build and fail it right away, instead of pushing it down the pipeline to do more expensive testing. So again, the definition of smoke test is a simple preliminary test that basically reveals failures. Again, it's controlled. And the reason why you want that smoke test early in your pipeline, or even later on down your pipeline, is to suss out, again, easy fixable bugs, low-hanging fruit type things, and to avoid of expending a lot of effort and time and complexity in other tests, right? So we all have like performance testing, load testing, right? Those are really expensive, time-consuming, and also just expensive and time consuming and complicated, actually, in some cases. So again, smoke tests kind of give you that warm and fuzzy right off the bat. That doesn't mean you don't have to do the other testing. It just means that you're getting the simple tests out of the way early. And again, the smoke test will help you, right? Just like that plumbing example I gave you, it lets you detect failures early on, right? And then you're basically prevents you from releasing buggy software. It also helps you avoid the unknowns, right? Just like any testing out there, the tests are supposed to suss out any of your unknown kind of failures or bugs within your software. No different, but again, it's a very light and controlled test. So I get this a lot when I speak to folks in the community, when we're having this discussion about testing in general, but more in particular, smoke tests, right? So like, when should I run it? Should I run it in the beginning of my pipeline? Should I run it in the middle? Or should I run it, at the end? Or should I run it when I deploy code? These are all valid questions. And my answer is, every time you change code, you should be running your smoke test. Excuse me. And this is true, I think, for pretty much any kind of change to code. But you should implement, if you don't have smoke tests, and I'm not talking about unit testing, right? Unit testing can get a little complicated as well. I'm talking about the simple things, again, low-hanging type fruit. And when you're a good place to put these smoke tests, right, is obviously in your continuous integration, continuous delivery deployment pipelines. So definitely leverage CI/CD to run these smoke tests every time your code changes. And when you're doing that, you're essentially running your smoke tests on every CI/CD run. Now, again, you could run various smoke tests in different segments of your pipeline, but again, run your smoke tests on every run on your CI/CD pipeline. Now today, I'm going to be speaking more particularly to deployments, since this is a DevOps group, and I'm sure that's primarily what we're interested in running. You definitely want to run smoke tests after you deploy your code into a target environment. And what I mean by that is, often we're in our pipelines, we're testing some code maybe in the CI/CD platform. Then we're going to deploy the code to maybe a dev environment and then run some testing there as well, right? So when I'm talking about deployment testing, that's what I'm talking about, is when we actually deploy code to a target environment and we're trying to smoke test, or we're smoke testing it to try to suss out any errors, right? Again, low-hanging fruit that we may encounter. So if you're going to run deployment or smoke tests on deployments, I would highly recommend that you start looking at infrastructure as code and leveraging that if you're not doing so already. For those of you that don't know, infrastructure as code is just a way for you to codify your infrastructure. Meaning, if you're running infrastructure in AWS, Azure, or GCP, Google Cloud Platform, you can codify all of those resources that are running, like your servers, your firewall rules, any kind of security roles that you have. You can codify in like a tool like Terraform or Pulumi, which is what I'm going to use today in my demo. So again, leverage infrastructure as code to be able to provision and maintain any of that infrastructure. And the best part about using the infrastructure as code in kind of a smoke test or deployment mechanism is that you can tear it all down, right? So you stand it up, you tear it all down, or you stand it up, deploy your code that you want to test, run your smoke test, and then you tear it all down, right? If pass or fail, either way, you can tear it all down. So that helps you with understanding that the software runs a particular way in the target environment. So I think I answered this already, but I also get this question quite often, which is, should I run my smoke tests when we're talking about deployments? Should I run them pre or post deployment? Again, my answer is both. Excuse me. All right, sorry about that. So the answer to should I run my smoke test pre or post deployment is both, right? So, and again, just like when your code changes in your CI/CD pipeline, or in your, just like when you run smoke tests when your CI/CD pipelines or your code changes, you should be running it every time you do a deployment, just to make sure. And I don't care if it's in development, I don't care if it's in QA, I don't care if you're deploying to production. You definitely want to run smoke tests after stuff has been deployed, right? I also get this a lot. So I say, hey, you should be, running smoke tests on every code change, and you should also be running it every time you deploy code. Folks tend to, I don't know why, but they tend to believe this might be a little overkill. I disagree with that 100% because, right, again, smoke testing will give you insights into the behaviors of your of the application within your target environments. I can tell you from experience, and I'm sure some folks in the event here have had the situation where everything's cool all through your pipelines and in every target environment that you deploy your application to, but once it hits production, right, it takes a huge shit on you, and you just don't know why. If you have smoke tests, at least you'll have some sort of indicator, right, of what's going on. I can tell you from personal experience, smoke testing has definitely saved my butt more than once, and I definitely highly recommend that you fit that in somewhere into your whole process, right? Whether it be deployment or your CI/CD processes, because it does again give you some of that telemetry, some of that the data that you can get back from a deployment to help you either give you that warm fuzzy that everything's cool, or give you that hard stop, right? Like, hey, this is a failure. We need to roll it back. So we're coming to the end of this presentation regarding smoke tests. So the recap real quick. Wow. Okay, there you go. So definitely, leverage automation to start running smoke tests in your CI/CD pipelines. It helps with uncovering all those the bugs that are like the low-hanging fruit, right? Again, these are small, controlled, quick, simple tests for your applications, and maybe even deployments, which is the context we're talking about today. They provide you valuable insights that will help you solve any problems, with the application should they occur, and it also gives your release team a warm fuzzy, right? So if you implement smoke testing throughout all of your CI/CD pipelines, your release managers and your teams are going to feel a lot more comfortable about the build releases that are scheduled to be deployed. I can tell you, if you've run it all through that system, right, and you run the application in the environment that you're targeting, in the manner that you usually deploy this stuff, again, you're going to get that nice seal of approval all the way through the pipeline, and then it's a lot easier to address the abnormalities or when things are not normal after deployment. I think this is the end of the presentation as far as the slide deck goes. But what I want to do now is jump into some code. Mike, should I take any questions before? Can we do that before I jump into this?
Yeah, and let's see. I don't see anybody's posted any questions yet, but
oh, okay. Can we take like a minute if anybody has a question or? I don't know. Do they just type them in? Or?
Yeah, they could type them in
Okay.
on YouTube. So just waiting to see if anybody has any questions.
Oh, we're on YouTube. Oh man, you're turning me into a YouTuber.
There you go.
Nice. All right. Well, let's do this then. If you have any questions, please just type them in there, and Mike will read them to me, I guess.
Yes, I'll get them over to you.
All right. Cool. So, how many people are in there, Mike? By the way, just curious.
Currently, we have 14 people
Nice.
online viewing. So
cool. All right. So let's jump into a deployment. So what I wanted to show everybody here was a very simple demo of how you could leverage smoke testing within your CI/CD pipelines, along with some infrastructure as code. So first thing here, I have a project that I use often for demos. And what I have here is basically a simple Python Flask application, which Flask is a web server type, or I almost call it web server type, but it's like a microservice they call it, and it basically enables you to build out like web service type things like APIs or static or dynamic web pages using Python. But the application's not the focus here. Primarily, the app's just here to kind of show the demo and the pieces of a CI/CD pipeline. But what we need to do is, in order for us to make changes in the pipeline, or at least to show off this demo, I do need to change my application, right? So before we do that, though, I'm going to jump over to the Circle CI dashboard. So what's going to happen is I'm going to walk you through the demo real quick, and then we're going to actually do it. Well, actually, you know what? Let me reverse that. Let's jump right back into the code, because this takes some time. So what I'm going to do is change this version number to, let's make it version 10, right? And then I'm going to save it. And then before I commit this, so I've changed some code, right? Just pretend that I made some massive changes, whatever. But literally, I just changed this version number. And so we changed the version number. And I have some unit tests here that will run. Where are they? Tests. These are the. Where are my tests here? Here we go. Yeah. So here's a Python simple unit test, right? So I wanted to highlight this because my smoke tests are going to do the same thing, similar things. But basically, what I have here is a unit test. Now, the unit tests are usually closer to the application itself. What they're designed to do is give you the ability to test, like if I had multiple functions and different kind of classes and objects. Unit tests are designed to test those specific functionality, right? So you would have this, if it was a full-blown application, you would have a ton of unit tests, and then you could even group those into test suites, right, and run those. By the way, those should be run every time as well, because unit tests, again, test functionality of your application and maybe classes and things like of that nature, right? So they also can be more complex than a smoke test, like I talked about, right? I just wanted to show you, this is actually a really simple unit test because, again, it's a simple application, and I'm not trying to show off any kind of like grand feature here. So again, the application is not the focus, but since we're talking about testing, I wanted to show you a unit test, because this is going to be run in my CI/CD pipeline, right? But again, let's close that up, and let's talk about the smoke tests, right? So the smoke tests are here. This file here is basically my smoke test, and the smoke test, this particular smoke test, is designed to be run for a deployment, right? The reason why I say it's designed to run for a deployment is if you look at what's going on here, it's written in Bash. And let me just, before I continue there, I want to give a shout out to ASM89, who is, I believe his name is Alexander. I'm using Alexander's work, which is called smoke.sh. It's a Bash, it's a shell and Bash type framework for smoke testing. So if you like to use Bash, and I mean, I could have done this in any kind of language, but I figured, you know what, it's CI/CD, it's already in the shell. Let's use something. And I found this pretty cool project that I've been using. I recommend that you all check it out if you're interested in it. But basically, this is what I'm using, this framework. And if you look, this is the core of the framework right here, right? So he's stubbed out a bunch of different functions in Bash that you could leverage in your smoke tests. But this is where the actual test is occurring. So what I'm going to do real quick is run through this with you. Basically, I'm setting up some timeouts so that if, excuse me, if we have a failure, I can go ahead and, whack the application, or not the application, but the resources it's going to create. And then from here, I have a Pulumi call. So this is like using my infrastructure as code, which I'll show you in a moment. And then at the end, this is basically like, again, this call is going to create all the resources that I need, which is going to be a Kubernetes cluster, GKE cluster in Google Cloud. It's going to deploy my app for me. And then once that's all set up, the smoke test, they run really, really quickly, right? It's going to retrieve this this IP address, and then it has, right, that environment variable now has the value it needs to start running my test. So I can basically do a while loop here, and then it's just going to go ahead and ping that URL or that IP address, right? And until I either get a non-response or the timeout hits, or I get its OK 200, which is what's happening here, right? So I'm not only am I checking for the OK 200, I'm also checking for some text that's going to appear inside of the static web page, right? So I'm basically checking the body of the site for these values, which are welcome to CI/CD and then version number, : right? Really simple tests. Again, these are just simple things, right, to suss out any low-hanging fruit type things. And then once that happens, at the end, it's going to basically destroy all of the infrastructure that was built. So hopefully the demo gods are with me tonight, and we'll be able to show all this off. Now, this is the smoke test. So let's kick off the CI/CD pipeline, which is here. Let me jump back over. There we go. So this is the pipeline. In Circle, this is the Circle CI dashboard, and my project is orb Pulumi GCP. I'm working off of this branch called Smoke Test. And what's going to happen here is once I change that code, the pipeline or Circle CI will detect the change. When I change the code and I push it upstream to GitHub, Circle CI will detect that change, and then it will kick off my build pipeline, which I'll show you while this is running, because it's going to take a few minutes to run. So let's go ahead and change the code and kick off this pipeline, because I'm really excited to show you what this does. So I already saved my code. Let's jump over to a terminal if I can find it. Actually, you know what? We'll just do it in Microsoft Code here. Why not? I know I could point and clicky all this stuff, but I'm not going to do that. I'm old school like that, right? So, and we're going to do some git status, and I'm the worst typer, by the way, so bear with me. So, all right, so we have some change. So I did a git status. Now we need to do a git commit, and then we're going to do hello, and then give it a message, which is not a capital M, just a regular. And then we're going to do, I don't know, test version 0010, something like that, right? So I already committed that. Now this is where I'm going to do a push upstream. Circle CI, again, is monitoring my GitHub repo. So once this is pushed up, we should see that Circle CI has detected the change in a moment. There you go. And it started kicking off my pipeline, right? So the first step, let's jump into that real quick. So my pipeline kicked off. The first step in my pipeline is a build test pipeline. Again, remember when I talked about running my unit tests? This is what it's doing. It's installing dependencies for Python that it needs, and then it ran my unit tests, which are great, right? Simple, no problem. All my unit tests have passed. Let's jump back one to the pipeline. Now, since my unit test passed, right? By the way, you could run smoke tests in here as well. The reason why I didn't run smoke tests in this particular build or this stage of my build is because I already kind of did the same functionality that the smoke test is doing by running in my unit test, running a OK200 test, which they're not showing here. And the reason is, right, we can go to test artifacts. And I pinned should have, no, I don't have it here either. In any case, I'm doing a OK200 test already, right? So I'm not going to run a smoke test. That would be a waste of time. We've already kind of established that that's one of the tests. So let's jump back over to, I need to look at that later. But let's run back over to, the other pipeline. My bad. Got a little lost there. All right. Let's go back one. Oh my goodness, come on. All right, let's just jump into the pipeline. Anyway, so what's happening here is the system is now building a Docker image based off of that, right? And it has. So take a quick look here. It built me a Docker image, right? And then it pushed it up to Docker Hub. So the cool thing about Circle CI is we have this ability for folks to leverage Docker as a runtime to run your builds in, right? And also, you could also build Docker images within Docker, if that makes sense. So simple pipeline, right? So we got the first two stages of our pipeline built. Now we get to do the fun stuff, which is deploy the application to Google Cloud or Kubernetes cluster that doesn't exist, right? So if you look at all the steps here, it's installing the dependencies, meaning this is installing into the Docker runtime that is running our deployment. It's installing all those dependencies that it needs. Again, this is a Python Docker image or Python, Docker image and application. So what it's doing here is it's activating my creds, right? So it's downloaded the Google. Oh, so now we have in there. What happened here? So we had some code change. This is interesting. All right. So something changed in my CI/CD pipeline, which is cool. We can see if we can debug it live, right? This is what CI/CD is all about. So basically what happened here, I'm pretty sure I forgot something, or maybe they added a new flag that I wasn't aware of before the demo. So that's cool. Let's go back to the smoke test, right? And see what's happening here. So it failed. So it's saying, and let's make sure we get the right error. So let's see. So in that line there, we need to say yes. Okay, cool. So let's find that in the code. And then, by the way, this is the pipeline configuration file. So all that's magic stuff that you saw happening, right, in all those different pipelines are due to this configuration file. So these are the directives that Circle CI executes commands off of, and this is where you define your pipelines and all that good stuff. It's definitely interesting stuff if you're into automation. This is leveraging YAML, right? So the syntax that you're seeing here is YAML. But it's Circle CI's. I guess it's a data structure that Circle CI's platform understands. And I can go through this, but let's go ahead and fix that error because we want to get a cool deployment here, right? So let's look at, so we're going to run our smoke tests. And I believe, so because this is pretty cool, because I'm running my smoke test, right, to deploy the software, I'm using the smoke test to leverage the Pulumi CLI. So what we need to do is change the smoke test. So this is the line. Where is the line? This is the line that's going to disregard that. This is where's the line that's going to deploy my smoke test. Oh, wait, we do have it here. We need to go back. Sorry. I have to find the Pulumi update. Okay, so the orb, this is the problem. The orb is, so I see what's going on. So they have an orb, which is a Circle CI encapsulated package. It's basically like an NPM store for Circle CI configurations. And if you look, we're using Pulumi code. So I think they may need to update their orb, which let's look at it real quick. Circle CI, and then orb. The Pulumi check here. So either something happens in the orb. I want to make sure that something, maybe they updated an orb and I'm not aware. No, they haven't touched it in a while. So let's go ahead and look at what the source code looks like for this orb. So by the way, we have a registry of all the available orbs. And again, the idea behind the orb is to enable you to do things like this. Where is the line here? So this is our deployment step, right, in our process. And the Pulumi orb allow you to run parameterized YAML. So it's kind of pre-encapsulated against their CLI tool, right? So it has a login step, and then you have to provide it an access token, which is hidden in an environment variable that you could set up within the Circle CI dashboard. And then, right, if you look through all these, this is just setting up the Google CLI because that's required to deploy things to Google. And then this Pulumi update is basically the command that you have to call in order for the system to kick off a Pulumi build for you or execute Pulumi code. Then, by the way, this is the infrastructure as code piece. So let's jump over to their source. I just want to make sure that I have, maybe I didn't set this up right, but my demo has been working for a while. So this is the source here, and I'm going to look up the update command. If I find it here we go. Parameters, right? And do not perform preview. That's okay. But there's no parameter for a yes command, which is, I think, our problem here. So we could do this one of two ways. I could either call the Pulumi update command myself, or just take this. Let's see if there's a yes behind this. No, yeah, that's the problem. So we don't have the yes command flag in there, which I'll let them know that this is yeah, we need to add that. Anyway, so let's go back. Let's see if we can fix this manually. So instead of calling this, what I'm going to do is let's just do it manually, right? So we'll do in this piece here, we'll just say we'll call Pulumi. And then we're going to say, I believe it's stack. I haven't played with this in a while, right? That's one of the bad parts of when you automate things, you forget, right? All the little tricks and tips that you use. Now, I'd rather just jump into the Pulumi documentation and find it, just to be sure that I'm calling this correctly. Actually, I can just use the source code, right? What am I thinking? It's right in front of me. All right, so let's jump in here. Let's find this guy here. All right, so stack. Yeah, this is what I was looking for here. So the CDW, no problem. Just a little bit of extra work, and I'll just grab this here. And then so basically you see this orb here is basically handling the CLI calls for me. But before I continue, what I want to do is comment this out just so that it won't run and fail again. So let's find this here, update, and make sure, okay, we need to skip the preview. And I think that's a true. I'm guessing true or false. So let's go ahead and find out. Yeah, so do not perform preview, right? Right, so we don't want to perform a preview. Okay, great. All right, so we'll just add that to our line here, as well as the is it just false like this? I believe so. And then as well as the yes. Cool. So unfortunately, this is going to run again. Hopefully this will work on this side. Let me see what we got here. And then I also want to make sure my smoke test is taken care of as well. Not that one, but this particular test. So these commands are here. So that's cool. All right. So yeah, I need to notify those folks at Pulumi that their orb needs a little work, which is fine. That happens, right? We have, when you don't update things. So yeah, let's go ahead and save these changes. Let's go ahead. Oh wait, yeah. So we have that. All right, cool. Let's do it again. All right, so let's clear this out and do a git status. Oh, man, long day. It's been a long day, everyone. All right, so let's do a git commit. That's why I like these events too, right? So it shows that like not everybody is a perfect developer or typist. These are really cool for me. I love this stuff. Also helps me reconnect with the code, right? So like I said, when you automate things, things are running great, right? You start forgetting all the little bits and tricks. I mean, they're never completely gone, but you know, you go back and learn. All right, so we're gonna say fixed Pulumi. All right, let's just do that for now. And then we're gonna do a git push. And this should kick off the build, and hopefully this line, right, has been, will resolve the issue of actually deploying our code. So while that's happening on the back end, I'll check in on it in a second. Let's go ahead and walk through this configuration. So basically, what I've shown you in this pipeline, which is running, great. What I've shown you in this pipeline is basically this, right? So this is again the actual configuration for your pipeline. And the way it works is, like I said, orbs. Sorry, I introduced you to orbs a little bit roughly, but it's a nice intro. So orbs again, right, is this YAML that I was looking at earlier, right? So the company Pulumi has built this YAML or this package called the Pulumi orb. And what it is orbs are Circle CI's kind of named for this packaged up YAML. And again, you can leverage it. It's shareable, reusable YAML, which if you know anything about YAML, it's a data structure, not a programming language. So a lot of the reusability is not there. You have to cut and paste a lot of things just to change one value, right? And it makes your configuration file really, really long and uncumbersome and hard to navigate. So what Circle CI did was we built this concept of orbs so that people can package functionality and multi-use patterns, right, into a nice releasable encapsulated piece of code. So that's what orbs are. When you see this here, we're just saying, hey, in this pipeline, I want to leverage these Pulumis. And this is just a namespace, right? So what you're doing here is just setting a name that you're going to use throughout the pipeline. And then this is the location that Circle CI in the registry, the orb registry, that Circle CI will grab that code, right? And then inject it. So it's almost like an include statement, so to speak. The next step here is a key here is jobs. Jobs are basically a list of commands, right? Or a list of grouping of commands. So remember when I ran my unit test, this is the job that I called build test. By the way, these are arbitrary. At least this one here is arbitrary. You can call it whatever you want. So this is like a label for it, so to speak. And it's very useful within, when you're assigning jobs to a workflow, which I'll show you in a moment. Again, and once you have a job defined, you definitely need a place to run this job, right? So what happens here is you have to define what we call an executor. Right now I'm using Docker, but Circle CI has 4 flavors of an executor. We have Docker, we have Linux, which is, I would say a virtual machine executor. What a virtual machine does is gives you a lot more horsepower than a Docker image, right? So we do a lot of runs and builds. Our customers are like AI companies. They need a lot of GPU, a lot of horsepower. So they use the machine type, right, versus Docker images. But most of our customers can get away with using a Docker runtime instead of full-blown VM, which are obviously, right, Docker is really easy to manage. We also have Mac OS, iOS. So if you're an iOS developer or a Mac developer, we have runtimes for your builds in that genre. And we also have Windows, which is one that we just recently added a few months ago. So now we have pretty much the 4 major operating systems and runtimes that you can build your code on. The next step here is what we call, so now that I define where I'm going to run my code in the executor, now we have what we call steps. And steps are literally the actual commands that we're going to check or to run against. So when you have steps defined, you have multiple run commands, right? So remember when I installed my Python dependencies, I created a run command for that. And then I ran a pip env install. And then another run command was to run my PyTest, right? Which is the unit test that I wanted to run. So that we got that step out of the way. Now remember, build test, right? If you look at the Circle CI dashboard in our pipeline, it failed again. All right, what's going on here? Now it's not installing dependencies. Okay, so let's take a look. And it's because unknown flag stack. Oh boy. All right. Let's take a look at the code. All right, let's look at their Pulumi code and grab it since we were already there. All right. Doesn't understand. So what's going on here? All of this used to work. All right. Mike, how are we doing on time?
Yeah, we're doing good.
Okay. So I don't know what this is complaining about. We got it all in there. All right, let's see what's if I can't get it going, then I'll show you how we run it manually. Yeah, so in what line here? So starters. How is this All right, let's quick fast. Let me let's do this then. Oh, I think I know what happened. I know what it is. Well, no, it's jumping in here. The GKE, these are all good. So, all right, what I'm going to do here is take this one out. We'll give this one more try. If this doesn't work, then we'll call it a day. But what I'll do is I'll put this down here, and then that should do it. All right, cool. We'll give it one more try. Demo gods, they're not with me tonight. That's okay. I promise it works. And then we're gonna do a dot circle big. Give it a message. Work, please. All right. Let's do a get push. Not a git push, but a get push. All right. One more time. Let's see if this works. So basically, yeah, so continuing down, what I wanted to show was we could just jump down into the deploy GCP. So basically, right, I have a label here, and if you jump into, again, you basically saw that happening. Yeah, so deploy GCP, right? So remember those labels I was telling you about? You can name them whatever you like. Let's see, make sure that this thing kicked off so we're not sitting here waiting in the winds. Of course. Yeah. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, it doesn't like that command for some reason. Right. Oh, I know why. It's YAML, right? So you have to have everything nice and flush. So it's like almost like Python, right? So you have to have everything nice and flush. Let's see if this does it. Not, I'm giving up on it, Mike, and we'll save it for another day. Now it looks like it worked. All right. Yeah, I was a little bit jumping the gun there. But basically, so while that's running, right, let's go ahead and finish off this, and then I'll jump into the Pulumi code to show everybody the infrastructure as code. So basically, right, so in our step here, yeah, so in our deploy to GCP, again, right, I have to run a Docker image. Now, this line here, these lines here are basically initial or environment variables that were required. This actually can go away in the future. I'll change it. But Python, I don't know if anybody knows, but Python 2.7, the last release was, I believe, last week. So there will be no more Python 2. Whatever. It's now moved on to Python 3. So Python 2. Whatever will no longer be maintained by the Python community, or at least by the Python official Python maintainers. You have to migrate all your code over to 3.0 and higher, right? So these are just environment variables that are required by Google Cloud System, the CLI, to basically give you, a functionality in your Google CLI. So you just set the path for where the binaries are and all that good stuff.
Angel, let me interrupt you real quick. I'm not sure if this was a question or a statement when you were trying to troubleshoot, but it says, is this stack option required K8 in quotes?
Oh, no, generally not. Generally not. Well, the reason why I have to throw it in there is because I didn't initialize it in the pipeline. Because normally their orb will handle some of that stuff. Again, the missing bit is this. Yeah, so no, it doesn't need a quotes. As far as, unless the CLI has changed, I don't think so. Well, at least I never used to have it before. So yeah, anyway, so right, just real quick, it'll start going through the pipeline, installing Python requirements for the app. These are generally so since I'm using Pulumi, the difference between Pulumi and Terraform, for instance, is Pulumi enables you to write your infrastructure as code using a programming language. Whereas if you're using Terraform, you have to use their proprietary syntax called HashiCorp language, HCL, which is a derivative of like, I think Golang, right? So for me, it's more like a Golang / JSON type structure. So Pulumi allows you to write things in like JavaScript, Python. I believe they support Go now. Java, maybe. I haven't kept up with what, they're always adding new stacks to their support. So let's take a look at the Pulumi code real quick in the project. So I have all this stuff here in the Pulumi GCP folder, and then I have a GKE, right? So this right here, this Pulumi main Python file is basically the Pulumi code that I'm trying to kick off with their stack, right? And that is one of the reasons why we had to install as well these Pulumi dependencies, right? Because I'm not using Terraform, I'm using Python, right? So they have SDKs, so you can write this kind of code. Again, the Pulumi option or product is geared for more towards developers, so that they can leverage. You don't have to learn this. If you're using Terraform, you don't really have to learn HCL and all the little intricacies that come with that. If you're a Python programmer, you can just grab the SDKs, read the docs, and you should be able to, recreate or create infrastructure using Python, which is pretty cool, right? Let's jump back over real quick. I'm going to check on. I failed again. Damn it. All right. It just wasn't meant to be tonight. I'm sorry. But let me show you one that did run, though, just so you know that, number one, that it worked. Yeah, this was like, wow, this is pretty bad, which is cool. I'll figure this out. But this is what it looks like if you pass, right? And if you look here, I'll just bore you. See, look, it ran, when was this? A few days ago, 3 days ago. But basically, this is what that output would look like, right? So, yeah, see, there's no yes thing. I'll have to do some research here. But basically, this was the command that I was running. And you can see here, right, the Pulumi detected the cluster. It would create it detected the instructions to create a cluster. It creates the Kubernetes, the cluster for me. Then it creates some nodes. And then it sets up a deployment for me as well, right, in that code. And then from here, as you can see, right, it takes a few moments, like I'd say roughly, I just have a 3-node cluster for the demo. It takes about like 7 minutes, 8 minutes. And then, it does what Kubernetes does. It waits, starts setting up health checks, right, against the pods, make sure that everything's working and running. And then once everything is up and running, see two of 3 available pods. Once everything's running, then the smoke tests kick in, right? The smoke test job. So if I jump back over to the CLI tool or the config, right, this where'd it go? Echoing, right? Initializing smoke test. We jump into this step down here, and you can see that. Oh, and by the way, sorry about that. If you take a look here, the outputs, right? Once everything's created and up and running, here's the IP address for that cluster. So remember, this gets pumped down into my smoke test down here, right? So remember when I had that HTTP call? I just ran a Pulumi call against it in my smoke test here. That's what this guy did here, was ran that smoke test, right? Or that call, and it got that IP address, see? So I'm checking for output app endpoint, and then I'm pumping it into a variable. And then that variable is used down here to do the OK200 test. And it's also used here to make sure that that's happening, right? So this is just the status checks. So yeah, go back over to the thing, and this is what my smoke test looks like, right? It tested for an OK200, it tested for the text in the body, and then it jumps down to, so 3 of my smoke tests passed. I'm good to go. The test passed, and now it starts running the destroy command to kill all of that infrastructure. So there you have it, folks. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. It killed my cluster. That way, you don't leave stuff hanging around. That's number 1, insecure. Number 2, not costing you any money, right? And your company money. So yeah, sorry that the demo didn't go as I planned, but I will fix it, and maybe one day we can show it or have me back. That's it. Any questions?
So great. Thanks, Angel. So let's see if we have anybody post any questions online. You can always hit up Angel down there at Punk Data on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So it's available there. Follow him. He has always a lot of good knowledge to share.
Oh, you think? I'm definitely political, that's for sure. But no, yeah, if anyone has any questions, I mean, I would be glad to get a rematch one day, Mike. So maybe I can give a different talk, and then, but still.
Why don't you tell us just give us a little teaser of what you're going to be talking at ONU, which is a conference that we have posted.
Yeah, I
little
think
teaser.
A bunch of, basically a lot about, I believe the ONU group has asked me to come and sit on a panel, and we're talking about, a lot of it's going to be, I believe, how CI/CD is the pervasiveness of CI/CD, right? So how teams are leveraging CI/CD, and I believe there's some security aspects to it as well, which are going to be pretty interesting. So yeah, it's probably going to be about automation, CI/CD, how it's being leveraged by companies, and also how to secure pipelines. So I think there's going to be multiple facets of questions there. But I'm definitely available to anyone. Just hit me up on Punk Data on Twitter, and if you want your own private demo of this thing, I can definitely do that as well.
Okay, so let's see. We got somebody posted here something.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see it on your screen here.
Is it possible for a dev to create, say, a feature branch and have the test pipeline automatically run on that? That's a good question.
I'm sorry.
In most CI/CD tooling, not only Circle, but most CI/CD tooling, that's the effect that you want, right? The dev, so the CI/CD platform should be testing all of your code all of the time. So anytime you're ready to commit code and push it up, right? So that's the trigger, is always the push up, because that's where the platform's monitoring your version control system. So it could be GitHub or Bitbucket right now with Circle CI. And once that change is detected, the pipeline kicks off. So yeah, the idea there is every branch that you're working on, whether it be feature branch or whatever, should be tested. Some companies, and justifiably, they're newer, maybe smaller startups, don't have a huge budget for this kind of thing. So they'll say, all right, you know what, we're only going to run tests on our code right before on a pull request. Some companies are small enough that they're able to get away with that. But the idea with CI/CD is to basically fail fast, right? So you want to run your code changes as soon as possible so that you understand where your builds are, right? So is your build passing all of your tests? Great, move on to the next stage of your pipeline. If they're not, right, you want to know right away, fail. Just like what happened to me, right? So I had a failure. I'm unable to do it in a time constraint right now, but I will fix that, and I will let everyone know it's available and ready to go. So we have a new question here. Mike, what was the other question? Or is that the same question?
I think that's a follow-up to the same question.
Okay. And can you control the behavior of the pipeline based on what branch it's on? Yeah. So right, yes. You can do what Circle CI has is, let me see if I can pull it up for you. Well, we have these things called filters. So you could do a filter, right? So the way that works is if you tag your branch with a certain tag, you could build filters into your pipeline that will only run X, whatever that's declared in your commit statement, right? So yeah, we have this concept of filters. You could also filter by branch. You could filter by a tag, right? And it uses regex to kind of parse all that information. So yes, we do have a capability for you to do that, and they're called filters. Any other questions, Mike? Is there anything special for rollbacks? So you would just orchestrate that on your own, right? So this is where smoke tests actually come into play, right? So Circle CI is not opinionated about what it is that you can do on the situation, right? So the idea is if you have a failure and your smoke test or whatever kind of test you run against, even maybe it might be your Datadog is watching, or Honeycomb, or some other Logs.io, whatever monitoring system you have detects a failure, you could flag that in the pipeline, right? And if you do a check for it, then you can constitute a rollback mechanism in your CI/CD pipeline automatically, right? So there isn't anything special other than what you're already doing. You just need to implement that inside of the CI/CD pipeline, if that makes sense, Kevin.
Let's see if we have anything else coming along here.
And I like your panda. Is that like good bad panda? That's awesome.
That's a Kevin's, yeah.
Yeah, it's got like is that a Batman eye or something? It's pretty cool. And he's got some nice choppers on him too. I guess that's Two-Face Panda, yeah?
Yeah. Like a yin yang.
Yeah, throw some bamboo at him, see what happens.
Yeah. So I guess I don't see any other questions popping up real quick here.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Hold on. You got one more here come up.
Is it, why did your demo fail? No, I'm just kidding.
No.
That's a valid question.
No, let me see, because it's taking a while to pop up here.
It's okay.
The question is, can Circle CI be hosted on premises?
Yes, we do have an offering. It's called, so what I showed you, this is, Yeah, what I showed you was the cloud version, right? So this is designed for organizations and teams that don't want to run any infrastructure, right? So the idea behind Circle CI initially was, hey, you know, we were getting we saw a business case for folks who were tired of running Jenkins instances or any kind of CI/CD on-prem, right? That takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. And quite frankly, it's pretty expensive. So a lot of organizations were like, hey, you know what? We'll pay someone for the compute as long as we just manage the important bits that are basically your code, right? And developers were super happy with that because you know what? They don't really want to be messing around, you know, provisioning servers, maintaining a Jenkins instance. And by the way, you know, Jenkins was great. I remember when it first came out, I used it, big fan, had it running for a couple of years. But it was very, very expensive and hard to maintain. And especially if your like master node took a shit on you, right? It was like, wow, it took days to recover from that. And then eventually I found Circle CI before I became an employee. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I don't have to worry about any servers. My developers were all just worrying about their code. And also, you know, it helped me when I was implementing my DevOps culture. We were switching from like, you know, this old way of developing software, and we were migrating over to adopting DevOps principles and practices. And sure enough, the tooling actually helped with that journey as well, because we no longer needed to focus on, you know, having sysadmins or SRE or operators dealing with the infrastructure. We actually codified a lot of things, which helped. And then our developers, right, they understand code. We understand code. And that's what turns us on. So once they saw that, wow, I can control the automation for this pipeline in YAML and in the code type sense. Yeah, it was a real easy transition. More people were more accepting of the DevOps implementation, you know, culture shift that we were trying to accomplish. So yes, we do have an offering. I would recommend you stick with the cloud if your organization can. But we do have customers like government entities, financial, right, fintech type customers that need to host their own instances due to regulations. I get that 100%. But if you can avoid that, I mean, why not pay someone else to kind of run your infrastructure for CI/CD, right?
Sounds good. Let's see if we can get some other people excited to give us some more questions and answers.
No worries. I'm here all night.
Yeah, we're all here all night. Yeah, but I guess I don't see anything else popping up right now. So we're a little bit over. So I just want to thank you, Angel, for coming on. And I guess we'll see you at the conference at ONU.
Oh, yeah.
In a couple of days. We posted on our calendar.
Nice.
And hopefully we're still trying to get off the feet on DevOps Days Dallas. So
yeah, I would love to come down. I got some talks for you guys.
There you go. Yeah, maybe we could implement some workshops or something.
Oh yeah, I could do that. Yeah. Maybe we can all come and fix my stupid demo.
Sounds great. Well, thank you very much, Angel, and thank you very much, everybody, for coming online and watching our meetup. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Take care.
Hey, Mike, ¿te va a quedar? You gonna stay on?
Yeah, I'll stay on.